week. Matt was actually up there at it for the whole time, right? You were there.
No, I left on the third day.
Left on the third day.
Boring.
Okay.
I was out of there.
So
Peaced out.
So Microsoft, announced a bunch of things that were going to be happening with this and at this event, things that we can look forward to coming up this year or maybe coming out sooner than that. And one of the polls we put one up on Twitter and Facebook, and we're doing this every week before the podcasts. And I'm going to say it again here, so if you want to answer, feel free to in the live chat and let us know. The question was, basically, Microsoft made some major announcements at its Build 2017 conference. What are you looking forward to? On Twitter, we had Windows 10 Timeline and Clipboard. Again, we'll go through each one of these here in a minute. Windows Story Remix, OneDrive Files on Demand, or motion controllers for mixed reality. And the results, we had a few hundred results on there of people answering. And by and large, though, on Twitter, the audience seems most intrigued by OneDrive Files on Demand, which I was kind of surprised by that. That sounds like a boring topic, just like boring. Which, we did get one response that just said hashtag boring to the poll, which, again, you don't need to answer it if you don't want to. And then on Facebook, we put up the same poll with one other item, which was, what are these things? And that seems to be the majority on the Facebook audience selected what are these things, not knowing what they were. However, OneDrive Files on Demand got 5% as the most interesting thing. Pretty much polar opposite between the Twitter audience.
So what was the most interesting thing of the not what are these things?
Of not what are these things, it was actually it's a tie between the Windows Timeline and Clipboard and the Windows Mixed Reality Motion Controllers.
And what percentage did they get?
26%. 26% each.
That's a pretty big difference then.
And
between that and OneDrive.
Yeah, and actually it also got 26%, the pretty much the same result actually on Twitter. So those two were the constant things through it. So why don't we get into this? We're going to talk about each one of these things. And again, feel free to drop your questions, your comments, whatever you have, hashtag boring, whatever you want to do. Drop those in there. Okay, we'll drop that joke. And let us know what it is that you want to know about this, because there actually are some pretty exciting things that happened down there. I'm a Windows user, so I'm always interested to see what they're going to come out with. But let's talk about virtual reality, more importantly, mixed reality, and these motion controllers. Matt, did you get a chance to? You probably didn't get a chance to get hands-on with them, or
no,
no,
I did not, because they did not have them there.
They didn't have it, and that's one of their
not even in a glass box.
Really? So you didn't even get a chance to take a look at them?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, this was maybe you can detail a little bit for us about what it is this announcement was.
Well, I mean, basically, if you've seen the controllers for the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, they're very similar to that. They're controllers that you put in your hands and you wave them around like an idiot, and things happen in virtual reality. So it's kind of like you kind of have to have those now for your virtual reality platform to actually be interesting to people, and to seem capable. So it was nice to have Microsoft to announce that. I mean, it was kind of like expected that they would at some point announce some sort of controller for their Windows mixed reality, because again, you kind of have to for people to take it seriously. But I know it was quite expected for them to do it at this point, this early on. So.
Okay, sorry, I was just fixing one thing here on our Facebook post. For those of you coming in on Facebook right now, we are actually talking about Microsoft Build, and so that's what we're kind of going through is each thing that happened at Build. Specifically right now, talking about the motion controllers for mixed reality and where that's at. So, I mean, I guess there's a couple of things with this. They are coming in at a lower price, is that right? Or a fairly reasonable price when it comes to this?
Seems like it. We don't really have a price for the controllers themselves.
Okay.
What we know, all we really know right now is Acer has a mixed reality headset that has an MSRP of $300.
Okay.
There will also be an Acer mixed reality headset bundle with the controllers, and that's going to be $400.
I mean, that's definitely a way lower price.
So that's $100 extra, and for the Rift, the motion controller setup is $200 extra.
Yeah.
And again, the headset's also cheaper. So
yeah, by quite a bit.
So you're basically comparing $400 to $800 for the Rift, $800 for the Vive.
Now, with the Acer one, is it going to be standalone, or will you still be tethered?
Still be tethered.
Still be tethered. Okay, so you still have to have that kind of a setup, but still that is a lower price.
Only by $200 because
Yeah.
the Rift and the touch controllers now sell for $600 even.
Okay.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they do. So, that's something to take into account is that the Rift controllers, the touch controllers, are $100, which is theoretically the same as the Windows mixed reality controllers might be. The difference, one of the main differences that I was noting the other day when we were looking at the specs of this headset as it came out, is it has two high-resolution LCDs at 1440 by 1440 each, which is higher resolution than the Rift or the Vive. 90 hertz, 95-degree field of view, with inside-out tracking, so there's no extra sensors, over HDMI 2 and USB 3.0. The interesting thing is the system requirements for the Acer are much higher than for the Vive or the Rift.
Yeah.
It requires a Core i7 with 6 cores or a Ryzen 7 1700 with 8 cores and 16 threads. You have to have a GTX 980 or an 8GB RX 480. Plus, they also want you to have 10 gigabytes of space and 16 gigabytes of RAM. So it's a pretty sizable SDK that is apparently requiring a pretty big amount of overhead to work at this point. It's interesting that this thing is, to see how this is going to compare to those, because I don't think you're going to see this from the same sort of games and the same sort of like focus on immersive experiences and things like that. I think this is going to be something that's much more, pass-through camera on Windows holographic kind of thing. I think that's sort of where it's intended to go, at least, because driving 90 hertz full replacement with inside-out tracking at 1440 by 1440 on each screen is not really feasible, even with those specs.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's true right now.
You think they're going more for
well,
augmented
first of all, I
or
wouldn't
virtual?
read too much into the requirements as far as like what is actually going to be necessary right now. It's too early on.
Right, but I'm saying the screens themselves are high enough resolution, and you have to have the tracking built into it that, like, I think there's going to be... most people who buy these headsets at $300 or $400 for the headset aren't going to have this kind of computer. They're going to have a lower spec computer that's not going to be quite as capable of running really high-end things. And like we've seen with the Universal Windows platform, I don't think we're going to see the same sort of, like, immersive, like, giant titles. I think those are still, for a while at least, going to be focused on the higher-end headsets.
I don't know about that. I
Matt
think,
disagrees.
I mean, I think that Microsoft's going to take a really multi-pronged approach to it. I mean, at this point, though, they haven't really announced much of anything as far as content goes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of anybody's guess. But I think it would be reasonable to expect that they're going to... If you want to know why the Rift isn't going to work with the Xbox One... or it hasn't worked, or why that hasn't seemed like the priority with like Scorpio. This is probably the reason right here. Microsoft is building its own ecosystem of mixed reality stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we'll see games on it.
Eventually.
For sure.
I mean, how's this, like, along with, like, the HoloLens announcements and things like that? I mean, is this going to be something incorporating more of those aspects into this, or is it something completely different?
No, and that's sort of...
Because, I mean, HoloLens just seems... And I'm just throwing that out just because the name alone, I feel like people are becoming more and more familiar with that name. Where does this fit in that spectrum of what we're talking about?
HoloLens, I think, is still very much in the proof of concept phase.
Yeah, it's
the
that
whole
far
idea
away.
there is that
It's
you
also a
can
completely
pack,
different thing.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
you can
and
pack
that's
like
what I mean,
batteries
just to, like,
and a
specify-
computer in the headset. That's the
Yeah.
idea, is that you can use this thing walking around your office, whereas these are very much, they're tethered headsets. You're hooking them up to a computer or a laptop somewhere, and you're staying within... however long that cable is from getting to to your computer, unless you've got it in your backpack.
So
or
it's
whatever.
not really that revolutionary.
I mean, the inside-out tracking is probably the more interesting part of this.
Yeah.
We've seen Oculus is working on it. We've seen some like Gear VR things trying to do it too. Project Tango has been trying to do it. So everyone's sort of been working on this problem of how do we take the sensors out of the equation.
Right.
So if this works,
That
it could
is
be
a-
good. But that's a
yeah.
huge if. I mean, I tried. We've had good experience with these things. I got to try the Santa Fe prototype at Oculus Connect last year. And it worked great. It was basically just a Rift headset with, it was literally like battery packs, and I wasn't allowed to touch it and all this stuff, but it worked. I walked around a room, I didn't bump into anything, I could see where the walls were. On the other hand, I tried Intel's Project Alloy, and in its early phases, I hit my knees on a coffee table in the middle of the room a bunch of times, and it was kind of awkward and didn't really work. So, these things are really... Whether they can pull this off is kind of anybody's guess. And I think the fact that they didn't show it off and that they're kind of expecting people to buy these things, the controllers and the headset, and invest in this platform without even bringing it out on stage and saying like, here's a physical thing is kind of a worrying situation.
They had the video. There was a video kind of displaying.
Oh yeah, I mean, someone waving around controllers and a dragon flying around.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what it was.
Let's just back up here for a second, and because we haven't really addressed what inside-out tracking is. So let's just back up for a second.
Fair enough.
Inside-out tracking is when you have cameras on the actual headset, and your tracking of what you're doing in the headset is accomplished by those cameras, which create an image like of the room around you. They understand that, and then they say, as you're moving, they say, hey, I see that you are moving that way, so I can understand that in the virtual reality environment you should also move that way.
Right.
And
also, don't run into this chair over here.
Yeah, and it can also see that there's an object there and say, hey, like, don't go over here. Those sort of capabilities are part of it. Mm-hmm. And that's a big step forward because you don't have any external sensors.
Yeah. And that's a big thing right now with Vive and Rift. You have to set up these giant stands.
The setup's a real pain, for a lot of people. And it also, adds to the cost overall. You have to have these external sensor units, and those are, money to manufacture those and ship those and all that. So the inside-out tracking is an important step forward. And the other thing that's really important about Microsoft's mixed reality is that they are trying to make it part of the Windows platform. So, right now you have your Oculus Rift and your HTC Vive, right? And they both work with their own storefronts. Yeah. And they both kind of work, they're peripherals. They're third-party things that are added on. You have to have the proper software, proper drivers. Microsoft wants it to make, I guess the long-term vision would be kind of turn your VR headset into something that's like a monitor.
Okay.
Plug it in, and it works at whatever specifications it has. Yeah. But it's a fairly simple device to plug in.
Yeah. And then fits right into the Microsoft ecosystem of just
and then like you have a VR app. You don't worry anymore about whether or not you got the VR app for the Vive or the Rift or whatever or any headset. You just worry you have the app, and then you load it up in Windows, and it runs on your VR headset, whatever that might be.
All right.
That's the long-term goal.
Yeah.
Now we're at the very It's worth pointing, as we said, they didn't show these controllers off. The Acer headset is available for pre-order now, but it's a developer's kit. We don't know when the full retail release is coming, and Microsoft has been very slow in actually delivering these products. So
they said holiday this year.
Yeah, they said holiday, but like. Well, they have to make that, and we don't know if that's going to be. I mean, that's just the Acer bundle.
Right.
So there's supposed to also be an HP one, that's supposed to come out in the same time frame. But we also know everyone's supposed to be making these. Lenovo's shown one off.
Yeah.
But we don't know when that's coming out, and we don't know what the content's going to be. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of specifics about how they're actually going to work once they are. Distributed.
So it sounds like a lot of questions.
And it's a big problem, too, and it's something we saw with the Oculus, where the DK2, the second development kit, it was something you could use to try out VR and try developing for VR, or, pay $300 and put it on your face and play, Elite Dangerous. But it wasn't a one-to-one transition. You couldn't buy a DK2 and develop your game and then release it immediately on the consumer version when it came out. There were a lot of differences between them that made that unfeasible. That you could get started, but you really had to go way back to the drawing board. And so they saw kind of a slow trickle of software because only the people they had been working with managed to get the 2.5 version before the final consumer version. And I think that's what they're trying to do here, is they're just trying to get something into developers' hands so that there can be apps for this. Because right now they're having a lot of trouble supporting the Windows Store, and this is maybe something that could draw people into it for once. Like you were saying, you could just have your VR app, and that's, I think, basically the only way they're going to get people into that universal Windows platform right now.
Just because people are already part of that ecosystem.
And people just have their own programs.
Extension of that. Taking a look here in chat. Again, we're talking about Microsoft Build, the conference. We've got a few different things we're going to talk about. Some of the biggest announcements from there. Talking about their motion controllers for mixed reality right now, and just mixed reality in general, and where maybe Microsoft is going with it. Seeing some comments here. Hello to Trudy in Florida, and hello to, let's see, well, there's a Poland comment in there somewhere, and I think I've lost that. But anyway, somebody from Poland, hello. Steve says, feels like there's still a big gap between what will be a good enough experience and what can be affordable, accessible, too early to produce, too much VR Kool-Aid being consumed, is what Steve's kind of saying.
Yeah, I've heard that a bit, that there's sort of like this, this bubble about VR, or that it's kind of this hot trending thing. And I think people are seeing that as sort of a limited scope of what VR is. That, there is sort of, I think, this idea of like really expensive consumer headsets. And I think things like this are actually when we're going to see real growth and see it become more than just sort of this niche fun industry. Like these headsets, the $100, the Gear VR is an insane seller. It has a huge mobile store. Daydream's doing well. Like these are things that there's clearly a desire for people to use this stuff. And you're right, like the audience for $800 HTC Vives is very limited. You chop that price in half and make it $400 with motion controllers. I mean, that could be enough. You're widening up that audience a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think as this tech continues to come out, and we start seeing maybe headsets from not built on the same platform from not our main manufacturers, you're going to see really good prices on those.
You're going to see the Chinese versions that'll come out. Yeah.
And then I think the controllers are probably an open standard too. I assume that's something that they'll eventually share with hardware partners.
That seems to be the case, but they
so they'll be able to produce their own
specifics about that either.
Yeah. So a lot of speculation as far as where they're going with this. That is the motion controllers from Mixed Reality, again, talking about Microsoft Build and what we saw there. Let's go on to some of the other things that they did discuss, though, because that's not all that happened. There are more feasible things that you will actually be able to use in a more broader sense sooner. And talking about Windows 10 and some of the updates that are coming to Windows 10. Now, this was the one that was codenamed Redstone 3, I think. Is that correct?
Used
to be codenamed that.
Now it's the Fall Creators Update.
Fall Creators Update. So this fall is when we will see this.
When they announced that name, there was audible laughter in the auditorium.
The Fall Creators Update.
Which, and they got some questions about that, like, what's with the name? It's not that great. And there's
it doesn't inspire a lot of excitement.
And honestly, like I know it's funny, but I don't think it really matters.
Right. I mean, it's going to update anyway, and this is something you're going to get regardless.
Right.
Like your Windows, this is what you're getting, whether you want it or not. Windows 10 will update to this.
I mean, the pressure on them to actually like come up with cool names, I think, is actually kind of a bad thing, because we saw with the Creators Update, they felt like they had to market it as the Creators Update, right? Yeah. And so they're like, oh, it can do this, this, and that, and then when it actually came out, it was like not really that great for creators at all.
Yeah.
It's still good. It still did things that are interesting. It's still getting updated much quicker than Mac OS or its competitors, but because we had that whole marketing thing, and then it suddenly feels like a product or something.
Yeah.
They really should just name it after something, like after one of the more interesting things in there. So like this time it should be like the story update, And it's like you're coming out with Story Remix, this new app that you are like really pushing, so just make that the story update, and that's what it is, because that's what it has in it. The last one would have been like the Paint 3D update or something.
There we go, Brad. Dear Microsoft,
or call it Redstone. You just name it after something in Minecraft and a number. Yeah, let's just leave it.
All right. Well, anyway, regardless of the name, you are going to get it. And so let's talk about what's going to happen in Windows 10. These, again, the updates that you're going to be getting. And keep your comments coming on Facebook and YouTube. I'll make sure and drop those in if you've got questions or specific things that you want to know. Somebody said the guy in the reddish jacket reminds me of Furio from The Sopranos. I don't have a ponytail, though, so that doesn't really work. But
it's also not a jacket.
It's not a jacket. It's a shirt. But
you need to get a higher resolution screen, man.
Yeah. All right, so Windows 10. So this timeline feature. Let's talk about that, what we're going to get with this timeline feature. From what I understand, and again, Matt, you were there at Build. Maybe you can explain a little bit more. But it sounds similar to something that Apple used to do. And again, I've been a Windows person for a long time. But is this kind of like Time Machine or... No. Okay, so it's something completely different. That is a good answer. That clarifies
not at
that.
all like that.
Then tell me about Windows 10 timeline.
No, Time Machine was like the sort of backup thing, right? Where
you could go back to any
version. Yeah. And the timeline for Windows 10 is like, it's more of like a task manager that works through time.
Okay.
It works through the time-space continuum.
In a world. Okay.
Leaps forward and back. Well,
right.
actually just back.
Okay.
And it can bring up the past things that you were doing, so you can revisit your past tasks, software you had open, web browsing sessions.
See what you were doing, what you were working on.
Yeah, and a lot of people at first glance and said, oh, it's like, browser history for your software. But that's not really quite, I think, the goal. The goal is that basically you just have a catalog of all the things you've been doing, so when you come back to your computer, you can pick up some tasks that you were doing right there and then. Okay. And you don't have to have... I mean, like, when we use computers, I think pretty much everyone, we kind of, like, have a variety of tasks that we're working on, different things we're doing, and a lot of times if we get interrupted, or that it's just something we can't complete all at once, we just kind of leave that stuff up there. Yeah. I mean, people do this a lot in web browsers, but also in other things. You have all these tabs, you have your email open, you'll have like a Photoshop session from something you're working on yesterday. You just never bothered to close it. It gets very cluttered. But it also makes sense. You kind of have to do that because once you actually start closing things out, it's kind of a hassle to come back to it. Yeah. So the timeline feature, it seems to be trying to resolve that. And another thing about it is that it's going to be cross-device. Okay. So that you can come back to tasks that are, on your laptop. You're doing something on your laptop. You can come back to that on your desktop.
So I like that idea. That it's nice and easy to that interface.
Or even on your Android or iOS device.
Which that's another cool feature. So they're really incorporating it more into that. So no matter what your device, you can always come back and more like Windows, your PC is kind of your hub.
Yeah. And that's powered through Cortana. Okay. Now, the degree to which that works, how it works, is still going to be a little bit up in the air. I think it'll probably work better with Android than with iOS due to permissions and whatnot. But that's the general idea.
Okay. All right, so that's with Windows 10 Timeline, just kind of explaining that. Again, if you have questions, let us know. Anything else? I know Cloud Clipboard. That's another big thing.
Yeah, and that's also part of this whole unification thing.
Yeah, which the Cloud Clipboard I do kind of like. Essentially, you can copy something. Say you're on your laptop and you copy a picture, copy a link to something. Then you can then open up your phone and paste it in that. Yeah. I love that idea.
This is kind of stuff that Apple has had. It's been pretty much, in my opinion, kind of the thing with Mac OS. I'm not a huge fan of Mac OS, but the thing with Mac OS is if you have an iPhone and you get a Mac, the way they integrate together is not something you can get anywhere else, really. Yeah. But Microsoft wants to try and solve that, and obviously it's a much tougher problem for them because they're not working with two devices that they themselves built.
They're going through it. Yeah. It's a lot of different devices.
They're trying to use this update to find a way to make that possible.
To stitch it all together, essentially. Okay. Anything else with Windows 10 with the update, the fall creators update, that we should look forward to or that stood out to you?
Well, the next two things we're going to talk about are part of the update technically, but they're
standalone all on their
features,
own.
Yeah. So.
Okay, well let's get into those then. So that's again the Windows 10 timeline update and the Cloud Clipboard that's going to be available on that you will be getting if you're using a PC later this fall. Some other things though, and this one was actually, I think it's a pretty cool concept and where they're going with this. It's the Windows Story Remix, and you may have seen this. You may have seen some of the videos on this, and it has to do with essentially creating videos and making better videos at home. I mean, creating better videos is really what it comes down to. And Story Remix, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt obviously was there at the event, but what it does is it takes all of your pictures and it can take pictures from other people or movies or videos and stitch them together and create a movie for you. And then you can modify that, you can change it, but it really seems like a pretty cool hands-on product that you can use to make better content.
Yeah. It does exactly that. The entire idea is that it's using Microsoft's knowledge of machine learning, AI, sort of, cloud, infrastructure to make a automatic movie creation program. And you mentioned they can take video even from other sources. So if you link up your account with some friends, they take videos, it'll actually pull in their videos too. So if they give the demo example was like a soccer game. Yeah. With, your soccer game for your kids, a few of the other parents, you sync up with them.
Yeah. Now so everybody's taking their own movies.
Have 3 different camera angles from 3 different people to create that final video.
3 different devices, different kinds of phones, whatever. You just upload the videos all up.
I think they were saying you have to have the app on your phone. So I assume there will be like an iOS and Android app, and you'll like sign up for the app.
Yeah, you have to have a way to get that information.
Yeah, it's not just
but the app is cross platforms, right? You could have an iOS and still use that app.
Yeah, they actually did show in the ad. There's a couple times where people are using iPhones to do it.
So I mean that's a really cool concept. I mean that's something that I can actually see a lot of people using.
Yeah, and this was the demo that got the most oohs and ahs out of anything. Yeah, actually there in the audience, there was a lot of people hooping and hollering.
Well, I think that's one thing that limits a lot of people when they want to create something like that. It's like, oh, I've got these videos, or I've got a video, and it's usually not that great. But if you can take everybody's and it stitches it together for you, you don't have to learn how to edit, other than the basic things if you want to change it afterward.
Yeah, and it did seem like, looking at it, like it actually did kind of look just like any other video editor program, and that it was like there was a timeline along the bottom, you could drag stuff around, and there was, your bin on the left with all your stuff, and the preview window in the upper right. Like it was, I think the trick is that you can press a button, and it'll sort of take all those clips and say, like, here they go in an order, how do you like that? And that's kind of the,
Yeah.
And then if you don't like it, you can remix it, which is the entire story remix. Like you hit the remix button, and it says, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll do it another way." And you can also you can put music on it. You can say, "I want this kind of music. I want this more upbeat or slower or whatever," and it will automatically generate it based on your parameters.
The other interesting thing that I don't know if it's really going to work that well is the tracking. Because they showed off a couple times, like during the soccer game, somebody put like text above one of the players, and they had it tracked to them. So as they moved across the frame, the text kind of moved with them in a 3D space. And they had one part where they're about to kick the soccer ball, and they sort of put a fireball in the soccer ball, and it lands in the goal, and it makes a huge explosion. And it was like, you dragged like a static 3D model onto an object, and it was like, oh, it's perfectly tracked, and there's smoke coming off, and trail effects, and boom, it exploded at the base. It was like,
it took like a few seconds.
Yeah, it was
like again, a soccer game, the scenario was one of the kids kicks the soccer ball into the goal, wins the game.
Yeah.
And they just take a pin, drag the like fireball special effect onto the soccer ball, and then the rest of the video, that fireball is just on top of the soccer ball. And it looked really impressive. Yeah. Now, the reason why we're skeptical about all this is that Microsoft has a habit of showing really impressive demos for this kind of stuff, and then very much under delivery.
Yeah, we just showed that video too of like them doing a dynamic background replacement against like a complex background with uneven lighting in just like a second. Like somebody just, I'll just drag a wallpaper and it'll just automatically cut that and put it in a model. And I'm running away, and like that's
probably not how it actually.
This is exactly what happened with Paint 3D.
I think you're gonna have a lot of weird videos with like dinosaur 2D drawings going like this all over the screen, and I want this to have my friend sew it, because that's the other had like facial recognition, so you could say like focus on this player, and it would do it. And I think you're gonna get a lot of weird stuff there where it's sort of, you get a lot of shots of shoes in the ground, because it's like, that's a person, isn't it?
Yeah, I went back and watched the demo clip for Paint 3D. And that's is the program that's in the last Creators Update. That is supposed to make it easy to 3D print things and do 3D modeling and whatnot. And it was, again, a very inspiring video, and it's like has these like teenagers making like 3D models that have like, I mean, they're somewhat complex, and this one kid like snaps a selfie of himself and like then takes the selfie and like pops it in an astronaut 3D model, so it looks like he's in space, and really cool. And then Brad, what did you think of Paint 3D when we got a hold of it?
It was really frustrating to use. You can only edit from front on, so you can you can turn, but then as soon as you try and edit, it snaps back to center, and you can't weld objects together in any way. So you sort of are just left dragging like circles and crude shapes around. Yeah. You can't really set depth. Like it's just not. It really is like Paint if you have a bunch of layers and there's some perspective to it. So
So that's Paint.
really
So we're wondering if the Windows Story remix is going to have some of these same
just
issues.
because the demo's impressive doesn't really mean a lot.
The basic functionality, I'm sure, is there. I bet you can load a bunch of clips in with your friends, and you can hit go, and it'll make you some kind of video with the things tied together. But, these things it's a really tough thing to do, to look at a video and say, who is that person, and should I track them? And how should this move throughout the space? How should it scale and skew as they move? How they turn? That's
because their idea was you could pick one person, right? Make them the focal point of all of the images, wherever they were. Yeah. I mean, in theory, that's pretty cool.
Super cool, but
we'll see if it actually
works.
works.
One thing that is nice is that whether all that stuff works well or not, it does mean that finally Windows will have a basic video editing app again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure some people remember Windows Live Movie Maker.
Oh, yeah.
And Windows Live Movie Maker was actually kind of great in a way. It was you could download it easily.
Behind the scenes, Dan, who's producing this show, is shaking his head vigorously.
But you could download it and you could make a video for yourself very easily and simply. And it was a basic level of video creation that just it was nice to have.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make just a simple home video. And then it sort of stopped getting supported, got older and older, got, more and more irrelevant. I think people need to have a basic video editing app as part of their operating system.
Especially now. I mean, there's so much
Mac OS has always sort of been the standard bearer for that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Microsoft isn't going to catch up to that.
Yeah.
But I think Mac OS sort of showed the evidence that having a capable video editor is important.
Yeah.
And it's always been kind of a shame that Microsoft doesn't.
Well, now we'll have at least this Windows Story. So Windows Story remix. All right, the final thing that we need to get to, talking about Microsoft Build, and this is a highly contested issue here with these two. Also on Twitter, it's also highly contested on our Twitter and Facebook poll. Facebook users were not excited about OneDrive files on demand, something that was announced at Microsoft Build, whereas Twitter users were very excited about it. So it's complete polar opposite. Let us know your comments and what you think about it, but talking about Windows OneDrive files on demand, and we were also kind of comparing that to Google Drive as far as what Google has. But Matt, maybe you can explain, what is OneDrive files on demand? What are they going for here?
So basically, it just means that when you have files in OneDrive and you're browsing them in your Explorer,
yes,
on Windows 10, you'll see the files, and they will not actually be downloaded to your computer, but when you open it, it'll get downloaded. When you actually need it.
So you can utilize that cloud storage and...
Yeah, and it doesn't take up actual space on your hard drive. And in addition to that, other programs can actually request those files as they could any other file on your operating system. So if you have an image editor, I guess, any sort of software that's going to be connected into your OneDrive files, you can go in there and you can open that file, and when you open it, it just automatically downloads it.
Okay.
And opens the file rather than having to go and retrieve the file separately and then open it.
Yeah.
With the software.
You can do it in one kind of
which
easy
is very
motion.
convenient.
I feel like some programs already had that, right? Because I feel like I've definitely opened files from my OneDrive with Photoshop and then saved them back to a OneDrive folder.
I don't know about Photoshop.
I've done it
with
Word, and I've done it with Word by accident a lot.
Word, it definitely works.
Yeah, where it'll default to OneDrive, and I'll save something in my OneDrive and then not be able to find it.
But that's also a Microsoft app. I think Microsoft's Office apps are set up that they are supposed to open OneDrive files. Right now, the way OneDrive works is like this. You set up OneDrive. You are presented with a list of your folders in OneDrive. You choose which of those you want to sync by clicking checkboxes. And that's pretty much it. The ones that you click are synced to your computer. The other ones, they're still in OneDrive, but if you want them, you have to go retrieve them separately through OneDrive Online or by syncing them in the app again.
Okay.
So that is also, a system that basically works, but for certain things, it's not very convenient. And this is also, for a lot of people that are sort of more into Windows, this has become an issue because there was a capability like this in Windows 8.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was when it was released or it was a later feature, but basically OneDrive had a placeholders feature, which basically did the same thing, and then Microsoft removed it. And they removed it because people were getting confused about what was actually on their computer and what wasn't.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people got angry about that.
as they
so
tend
they're
to
like,
do.
bring it back our placeholders. So now they are coming back in a different format that hopefully will be useful and yet also not difficult to understand.
And this is coming in the fall creators update.
Yeah.
That you'll get this. Okay.
Yeah, and and the other important thing to note, you will be able to tell what is actually on your computer and what's not by
nice
a
and
handy
clear.
little icon, which will show you on the file whether or not it's in the cloud.
That is cool. I do like that. Brad, you are not a user of OneDrive.
I don't like OneDrive.
To put it bluntly.
I always check that little box when I start up a computer that's like, no, save files locally only. And it's always like, oh, you took a screenshot. Are you sure you don't want me? And it's just I always have to like, no, leave me alone.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. That's like the best thing. The OneDrive save, the screenshots save the OneDrive. That's great.
I don't
That's
feel like,
so useful,
why do I gotta
especially
keep paying
for us.
so many cloud services? Like, I'm just over it. Like, I got my Google Drive.
Yeah,
I got my
stick with
files
that.
there. I got my email. I got my phone. I got everything tied into it. And I finally got rid of Apple, and I'm not going to start doing other things now. I already pay for stupid Office.
Hey, well,
I
you
actually have a
none of it.
OneDrive because I pay for Office 365, so I have that. But
not on your watch. You're not gonna
if it were up to me, I'd be using Google Drive. They have Google Keep too, which is like the kind of like their version of cross-platform sticky notes / clipboard. So they're trying.
They're
trying to bring some new stuff.
trying. They're trying.
Plus, I was thinking like with the browser with the Windows timeline thing, you don't really get that on Android because it's like you only have one app open anyway. So it's like, oh, what can I see what I was doing? Oh, Chrome, but I can open my Chrome and load up my last session anyway. So
What?
Matt is skeptical
I'm
of
saying
this.
the Windows timeline thing on the phone seems a little silly to me because it's like you can have one app open. So it's like, oh, you were using Twitter. Go ahead and jump back into Twitter.
You mean on Android?
On Android, yeah. The Windows timeline thing seems a little.
Yeah, but you can then open your tasks from your Android on your computer.
If I've been using Edge.
Oh boy.
I don't think that's not as if you're using
Okay.
Edge. I don't think that's the idea.
Well, that's a discussion
We'll have
that'll
to
need
see
to
how it
actually happen at some point. All right. Any final words from the Microsoft build? Matt, you were there. Excited about these things. Sounds like a lot of it. We've got to wait until fall before anybody's actually going to be able to utilize it.
I am interested.
Yeah.
I am a little skeptical of some
Okay.
things. I do think. What I predict is going to happen is this. It's going to come out. We got this motion controllers, mixed reality, Windows Story Remix. Wow, look at it! And it's going to come out, and the best thing is going to be Windows 10 Timeline, Clipboard, and all the Windows 10 desktop features in OneDrive, and that's going to be what actually is cool and useful about it. And the rest is going to be like, well, the motion controllers. Yeah, you can get them as a dev kit. And Story Remix. Oh yeah, like it's fine.
That's there. Yeah.
Works sometimes.
It's going to be actual
I don't know.
functional things that
Like
we use.
this has been the history of Microsoft updates. It's like they have the cool stuff, and that looks nice, but then it's all this like sort of functional techie stuff that actually ends up being really useful to people who care a lot about how their PC works.
Right.
So,
well, we'll have to see how it all works out. And again, you can see you can go into detail on all of this at digitaltrends.com. We've got some extensive reports. Matt had there's a ton of stuff on there from Microsoft Build. So if you want to find out more about that or what to expect with your PC and with your updates that you're going to be getting, definitely go there and check all that out. And I think that's about it for today. Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Talking about that. So again, this is Close to the Metal. This is our computing podcast that we do once a week. We broadcast live on YouTube and Facebook every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And then it's available as a podcast also. So you can go to iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Definitely subscribe to that. Got lots of back episodes you can take a look at and check all those out. And let us know in the comments what you think. Whether there's something you're excited about with this, or even if there's something that you're not excited about when it comes to the Windows updates, let us know about that on there as well. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week with another episode.